The rain was relentless, slicing through the evening like cold needles, turning the city sidewalks into mirrors of sorrow. People hurried past with their heads down, coats pulled tight, eyes fixed on destinations that felt warm and safe. No one noticed the woman kneeling near the traffic light, her thin shawl soaked through, her arms trembling as she held a baby against her chest. The cardboard sign at her feet had gone soft and unreadable, but her eyes still spoke clearly. They carried a quiet plea that words could no longer carry. That was the moment the millionaire's car stopped beside her, and everything changed. Daniel Cross sat in the back seat of his luxury sedan, staring out the window as his driver waited for the light to turn green. Daniel was known across the city as a man who had turned nothing into millions. Tech magazines praised his brilliance, business rivals feared his instincts, and charity galas applauded his donations. Yet inside the car, he felt strangely empty. The rain tapped against the glass, matching the dull rhythm of his thoughts, until his eyes fell on the woman in the rain. She was trying to shield her baby with her own body, whispering something softly as if the sound of her voice alone could keep the child warm. Daniel looked away at first. He told himself the same thing he had told himself 100 times before. He couldn't save everyone. The city was full of stories like this. If he stopped for one, where would it end? But something tugged at him, something stubborn and unsettling. He glanced back, just in time to see the baby stir and let out a weak cry. The woman tightened her grip, rocking gently, her lips shaking as she hummed through the rain. "Stop the car," Daniel said suddenly. The driver hesitated. "Sir, we'll miss the meeting." Daniel didn't respond. He had already opened the door. The rain hit him instantly, soaking his suit as he stepped onto the sidewalk. The woman looked up in alarm, pulling her baby closer, fear flashing across her face. She had learned long ago not to trust sudden attention. "I'm not here to hurt you," Daniel said softly, crouching a few steps away. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then answered in a quiet voice. "Aisha." Daniel noticed how young she looked, though exhaustion had carved years into her face. "And your baby?" "Her name is Sarah," Aisha said, brushing wet hair from the child's forehead. "She's been sick since last night." Daniel felt a knot tighten in his chest. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, then stopped himself. Money suddenly felt like the smallest thing he could offer. "Why are you out here in this weather?" he asked. Aisha swallowed hard. "We were staying at a shelter, but they're full. They said to come back tomorrow." I tried, but she wouldn't stop crying. "I thought maybe someone would help." Daniel stood up slowly. His driver watched from the car, confused and uneasy. "Come with me," Daniel said. Aisha shook her head immediately. "No. I don't go with strangers." "That's fair," Daniel replied. "Then let me take you somewhere warm." "A hospital." "Your baby needs to be checked." She looked down at Sarah, then back at Daniel. The rain kept falling, and the baby cried again, weaker this time. The choice felt cruelly simple. Aisha nodded. At the hospital, doctors rushed Sarah into a warm room, wrapping her in blankets, checking her breathing, her temperature, her tiny heartbeat. Aisha stood frozen, watching from the doorway, her hands clenched together as if she were holding herself upright through sheer will. Daniel stayed nearby, silent, feeling helpless in a way he hadn't felt in decades. The diagnosis came quickly. Severe cold exposure, dehydration, and an early infection. Treatable, the doctor said, but only because they had arrived in time. Aisha broke down then. She sank into a chair, covering her face, sobbing with a grief that had been waiting too long for release. Daniel stood awkwardly beside her, unsure what to do, until he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. Over the next few hours, pieces of Aisha's story emerged. She had once lived a normal life. A small apartment. A husband who worked long hours but dreamed big. Then an accident at a construction site took his life. Bills piled up. Her job disappeared when she had to care for her newborn. Family turned distant. One missed rent payment became 3, and suddenly she was on the street, carrying everything she had left in a single bag. Daniel listened, each word landing heavily. He saw echoes of his own past, growing up with a single mother who had worked herself to exhaustion just to keep food on the table. He remembered nights when the power went out and mornings when his mother pretended she wasn't hungry so he could eat. When Sarah was stable and sleeping, Daniel made another decision. This one would shock not just Aisha, but everyone who knew him. He arranged a private room for them in a nearby hotel, not for a night, but for as long as needed. He paid for warm clothes, baby supplies, and meals. When Aisha tried to refuse, her pride flaring through her exhaustion, Daniel gently stopped her. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is help. There's a difference." Days passed, and then weeks. Daniel visited often, not with cameras or publicity, but quietly, bringing toys for Sarah and listening as Aisha spoke about her fears and hopes. He learned she had once studied accounting but never finished her degree. He learned she loved to read but hadn't touched a book in years. He learned that what she wanted most wasn't money, but a chance to stand on her own again. The challenges were not magically erased. Aisha struggled with shame, with the fear that this kindness would vanish as suddenly as it had appeared. Daniel struggled with doubt, wondering if he was overstepping, if he was trying to fix his own past through her. But they kept talking, kept choosing honesty over silence. Daniel helped enroll Aisha in a short certification program, covered childcare costs, and connected her with counselors who helped her process her grief. When she landed her first interview, she nearly backed out, convinced she would fail. Daniel didn't promise success. He simply told her she was capable, and that failure would not erase her worth. She got the job. It wasn't glamorous. Entry-level, modest pay, long hours. But it was hers. The first paycheck made Aisha cry harder than she had the night at the hospital. She bought Sarah a small toy and herself a notebook, writing at the top of the first page, "We are starting again." Months later, on a bright morning that felt like a gift, Aisha stood in the doorway of her own small apartment, holding Sarah as sunlight poured in through the windows. Daniel had helped with the deposit, nothing more. The rest, he insisted, was up to her. As he prepared to leave, Aisha stopped him. "Why did you stop that night?" she asked. "You could have driven away." Daniel thought for a moment. "Because someone once drove away from my mother," he said quietly. "And I promised myself I wouldn't be that person." The story didn't end with wealth or fairy tale perfection. Life continued to be demanding and unpredictable. But it ended with dignity restored, with a child safe and warm, and with two lives forever changed by one decision made in the rain. Sometimes the most shocking move isn't giving money or changing circumstances overnight. Sometimes it's choosing to see someone, truly see them, when the world has decided to look away. And sometimes, that single moment of humanity can echo louder than a lifetime of success. Life did not suddenly become easy after that new beginning. In many ways, it became harder. The safety net Daniel had quietly provided was gone now, just as he had promised. Aisha wanted it that way. She needed to know she could stand without leaning on anyone's shadow. Every morning before sunrise, she woke to Sarah's soft cries, warmed milk on a small stove, and prepared herself for another long day that demanded more strength than she sometimes believed she had left. Her job was honest but unforgiving. Numbers came easily to her, but confidence did not. She sat at her desk each day, surrounded by coworkers who spoke casually about vacations and weekend plans, while she calculated bus fares and grocery prices in her head. Some days she smiled and blended in. Other days, exhaustion clung to her like the rain from that night she could never forget. There were moments when she locked herself in the restroom, pressed her hands against the sink, and wondered if she was pretending to be someone she was not. At home, the challenges continued. Sarah fell ill again one night with a high fever, and Aisha spent hours pacing the small apartment, memories of the hospital flooding back. Fear whispered cruel questions. What if she couldn't afford the medicine? What if she lost her job for missing another day? What if everything she had built came crashing down? She held her daughter close, tears soaking into the baby's blanket, promising again and again that she would never let the world swallow them whole. Daniel, too, was fighting his own battles. From the outside, his life looked unchanged. Meetings, deals, headlines. But inside, something had shifted. He found himself distracted, questioning decisions he had once made without hesitation. For the first time, he was seeing the human cost behind numbers on a spreadsheet. Late at night, he thought about Aisha and Sarah, not with pity, but with a growing sense of responsibility that unsettled him. He had opened a door he could not close. When the call came from Aisha, her voice shaking as she